What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Wednesday Devotional. Today we are going to go over Matthew chapter 14, verses 22 through 32. Let's get started. Immediately after this, Jesus insisted that his disciples get back into the boat and cross over to the other side of the lake, while he sent the people home. After sending them home, he went up to the hills by himself to pray. Night fell while he was there alone. Meanwhile, the disciples were in trouble far away from land, for a strong wind had arisen, and they were fighting heavy waves. About 3 o'clock in the morning, Jesus came toward them, walking on the water. When the disciples saw him walking on the water, they were terrified. In their fear, they cried out, "It's a ghost!" But Jesus spoke to them at once. "Don't be afraid," he said. "Take courage, I am here." Then Peter called to him, "Lord, if it's really you, tell me to come to you walking on the water." "Yes, come," Jesus said. So Peter went over the side of the boat and walked on the water towards Jesus. But when he saw the strong wind and waves, he was terrified and began to sink. "Save me, Lord," he shouted. Jesus immediately reached out his hand and grabbed him. "You have so little faith," Jesus said. "Why did you doubt me?" When they climbed back into the boat, the wind stopped. Then the disciples worshipped him. "You really are the Son of God," they exclaimed. Two things I want to go over about that. First is, starting in verse 26, it says this: "When the disciples saw him walking on the water, they were terrified. In their fear, they cried out, 'It's a ghost!' And in verse 27, it says, "But Jesus spoke to them at once. 'Don't be afraid,' he said. 'Take courage, I am here.'" What I think is so cool about that is how the disciples were scared. They're scared. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. Waves are crashing. It's a mess out there. Super big, whatever. They feel like they're about to sink. The boat's about to sink. They see something walking on the water. They think it's a ghost. They're even more terrified. And Jesus recognizes this. He knows, okay, they're scared. And instead of just keep walking or whatever, ignoring them, he calls out to them at once. It says at once Jesus recognized that they were terrified, that they're scared, and he calls to them and says, "Hey, don't be afraid. I'm here. It's going to be okay." Just in the same way as a father would call out to his kid. If you're a parent, maybe you send your kids to bed early or whatever. They fall asleep. You're in the living room and your kid wakes up and it's dark in their room and they cry out. They're scared, and you notice the fear in their voice. And all you have to do is say, "Hey, it's okay. I'm down here. I'm in the living room," and immediately your kid will calm down, right? Like in that same way, Jesus knew, like, I just got to tell them it's okay, and calm them. And I just think that's really cool. Just that's the God we serve. He's our Father, and he's the number one dad in the world. Like, if you had a great dad, Jesus is even better than your dad. He's better than me. I'm not going to say I'm the best dad in the world, but I think I'm an okay dad, and I guarantee you Jesus is a cajillion times way more than I could fathom better than me as a dad. I'm just glad that Jesus is that kind of dad, just the best. And if you had a bad dad, if you didn't have a great relationship with your dad, or you had no relationship with your dad, I'm sure you can imagine what a good dad would be like. And Jesus is unfathomably, it's a big word for me, he's a lot better. He's a million times better than any dad you can draw up in your head. Whatever the best dad you could draw up in your head is, he's better than that. He wants to make sure you're okay and that you feel safe. And that's what he did there for them. He noticed that they were afraid, and he calls out and says, "Hey, it's okay, I'm here." So I think that's the first thing I want to go over. Second thing I want to go over is Peter's courage, how Peter had courage. In verse 28, Peter says, then Peter calls out to him, "Lord, if it's really you, tell me to come to you walking on the water." And Jesus replies in verse 29, says, "Yes, come to me," Jesus says. So Peter went over the side of the boat and walked on the water towards him. The key thing in this one that I want to get you guys to recognize is how Peter walked on the water. It says at the end of verse 29, it says, so Peter went over the side of the boat and he walked on the water towards him. So he was walking on the water. When he first gets out of the boat, he's walking on the water. Everything's good. He's got his eyes on Jesus. He's focused on Jesus, and he's walking on the water. But check this out. So in verse 30, it says, but when he saw the strong wind and waves, he was terrified and he began to sink. So what happened was Peter took his eyes off God, and instead of focusing on God and focusing on Jesus and walking towards him and staying on the water, he starts looking at his surroundings, and he starts saying, "Oh man, the wind is ripping out here. The waves are huge. I shouldn't be doing this. What am I doing out here on this water? And he starts to doubt, and because he took his eyes off Jesus, and he sinks. But God is loving, and he picks him up. He picks him back up, and he saves him, and he takes him into the boat, and he says, hey, why such little faith? Why'd you doubt me? And I think in our own lives, this happens to us. Life can be going good. We're reading our Bible, we're praying, we're spending time with God, we're doing everything good. But then we start looking at our surroundings, and things don't seem perfect and great, and we're like, oh no, and we start taking our eyes off God. We stop praying, we stop reading our Bible, and we're focused on all the bad situations around us, whatever they are, whatever circumstances might be around us. We take our eyes off God and we look at those, and then we start to sink. The biggest thing I want you guys to take out of this is that as long as you keep your eyes on Jesus, don't take your eyes off God. Keep your eyes on him. Block out your surroundings. Just focus on Jesus. Everything's going to be okay. He's going to take care of you. He loves you. He wants the best for you guys. That's what I got for you guys. So that's today's Devo, guys. Hope you liked it, and have a great day.